Welcome to this special edition. Yours truly, Coffee with Dragon. Gonna continue the general geopolitics and, of course, the North American Collective. This is part one because yesterday, I guess, was the introduction. It is 11:44 a.m. in the morning. Oh, it just turned 45. Just turned when I was saying that. It just turned 45. So I guess 3.5 seconds on the clock. Just went out for about 25 minutes, 20 minutes. I just finished shoveling some snow and finish my stretches, geopolitical meditation of the morning, since about 6:44 a.m. A 4-hour geopolitical meditation, I guess, with that rock and roll. And gonna get that coffee, gonna put some coffee here in the mug. I'm gonna give a shout out, gonna salute the firefighters, butchers, bakers, nurses, truckers, electricians, the plumbers, the welders, the construction workers, all those truckers on the road, the daycare workers changing some diapers, the teachers, the electricians, the plumbers, all those changing some of those diapers once again, and of course the nurses finishing their 12-hour shift. I guess I'm gonna give a shout out to my anonymous friend for this beautiful holiday mug, auctioning it for $1 million. It's very thick, big, but it's very light. That's what I love about it, and I love the design, red cardinal. What I said, that red cardinal on the tree, singing some of that holidays. What you want, some honey with me? Get the dragon, gotta spit some fire. That we're gonna welding up for the construction workers, butchers, satellites up in the sky. You know that the eye, the sun where the moon shines. Yeah, that's that rock and roll. 24/7 in this dragon's lair. It's sports and fitness. Dancing is my favorite sport, and rock and roll and geopolitics is geopolitics, rock and roll, sports and fitness, dancing being my favorite sport and fitness activity. Love to dance. AKA I'm the priestess of the goddess. Priestess Hannah's always God bless. And goddess kiss. The coming of our empire of the 63. Let it rise and let it be. So we're going to put some of that good coffee, and there it is. Auctioning the mug, and it is a very cold day. Supposedly maybe it was going to be the second coldest or the first coldest in the month of December of 2025. It's -10. It feels like -20. So another cold day. Yesterday was cold as well. The past days was very cold. Last Friday was very cold. So we're going to see if today Thursday 11th of December, if we're going to get some of that big coldness again, and we're going to put some of this cup of coffee. Let's rock and roll with some cup of coffee. Grateful thank for this cup of coffee. 50 grams instant powdered coffee. I got it for 99 cents. So I saved some money, although the quality is not that good as the one that's product of Germany in the wee yellow box, which I got for $6. And of course, that one is 150 grams. That means if you do the math, 50 grams divided by 150 is a ratio of 3, right? So basically, 3 like this is that one that I showed in the last videos of 2-3 weeks ago. So basically I save half. I save basically half, because this is 99 cents. I bought it on special, and this is from Ukraine, but it doesn't say the country of origin. So this is actually instant powdered coffee from Ukraine. The company is from Ukraine, but of course the coffee beans, which were ground into the natural powder instant. It's instant coffee, right? It's ground instant powder coffee. It's not bad. It's one that I like the most is the one that's product of Germany. But since I was on a tight budget and I do need to get my cell phone. Yesterday I had a little bit of an embarrassing moment. I'm gonna give it a little bit of personal story, but it wasn't embarrassing because I don't really, as an Aspie, these social affairs are not. But I understand embarrassment and all that, and I understand social dynamics. But I went to pay my phone bill, and of course to inquire because I need to get a new phone, because the last video that I did with the phone was October 30th, and if you check the video, it was hour long and it was raining, and thus I went in the rain, and that consequently of course caused some damage. Actually, I do get the calls. I get the alarm sounds every morning when I wake up. The alarm sounds, it's around 6:30 in the morning, so my 3 alarms sound at 6:30, 7:18, and then at 8. So all my alarms work. I receive phones, I receive texts. It's just the screen is black out, so I can't see the other information on the screen. So basically I cannot film more videos. I cannot film. So I guess it's going on the 42nd day, 44th day, something like that. So let's get that cup of coffee and rock and rolling. So the story is that I went to the store, to the company which I'm with, the provider, my cell phone provider, of which I'm subscribed with. I have a good deal, by the way. Very good deal for the North America. I don't need international. I just text and calling, and unlimited calling, I guess, incoming, and receiving local, that is. And I mixed up the digits of my phone number, okay? Because there's two. I'm just gonna say there's it's 514, and there's two sixes and two nines, right? And the other ones, I was interchanging them, so I tried like 11 times and I couldn't find my account, and my account number, I didn't have it. I didn't have my account number on me. And that was it's relatively, I just got this new phone number about 4 months ago, right? So I had the older one. So the older one, I had it in my hand, but the older one was no more on the account because I changed phone numbers, right? So now I had to write it down. So basically, what I did, the mistake was, it was there's a digit that's one, right? So it's, let's say 616 or 617 and 619, but the one I was mixing with the seven, so, and the one with the nine. So basically, what I did is I was interchanging the one with the six and then the one with the nine in the order of the phone number, right? So I had all the digits. It's just the order was not correct. So I had them all. It's just their order, right? Because here in Montreal, my phone has 514 for the area code, right? Then there's 3 digits, right? And then there's 4. So there's 10 total digits, right? There's 514, and then you got 3 for the localized area, and then 4. So it's 334, the sequential numbers of how the phone operates, and all the phone systems, of course, which transpire to go around all the 3G, 5G, and 4Gs, and mostly 4 and 5G now. But the 3Gs and some 2Gs are still there operational. Right? They're still, in theory, they're still functioning. Even the 1G, the 2Gs, eh? The 3Gs are still functioning. 4Gs, 5G mostly. But I got a cup of coffee, so I can remember. And the worker there, and very nice service, I gotta say, was trying and trying and trying. And I said, maybe if I sing it. So I was mixing the 1 and the 9, the sequence, right? So it was not 619, it was 691 basically, and then the 4 other digits. So that was the problem I kept doing, and then I put the 1 where so I couldn't access my account, so I have to go again basically. I'm gonna try to go today. So cheers for world peace. Geopolitics, intro to geopolitics, gonna commence with gratitude, grateful, thankful, my rent's paid, electricity bills paid, got food and coffee. Thank you for the donation of the food. I'm just gonna sip a cup of coffee right here, right now. Let's drink a little bit. How much coffee is being drank right now? It's 11:52 in the morning in the EST. Hawk Island, Montreal is the island, big island metropolis. How many are drinking coffee right now? Where are they drinking coffee? What coffee brand? All across the 63, always for the 10, the 50, and the 3. There's always that information. There's always mathematics, and always 24/7. There's a constant apparatus, of course, of everything that we eat and we enjoy, and all the activities that we do under the sun, under the stars on earth, here in the coming of our empire of the 63. It's a bit bitter, so I'm just going to add a little bit of more water. Yeah, that's good. I think that's the good ratio now. Let's see. Yeah, now it's fine. It was a bit too strong, I guess, too bitter. But I usually drink 2 or 3 coffees a day, not more than 3 a day. That's my line. I guess if I do an overnight, I could, but that's past midnight basically. So if it passes midnight, and if it happens to be the weekend, the Sabbath, then I might rock and roll, drink a coffee on the Sabbath only, the 4th coffee basically. But it's past midnight, so I guess it's not considered to be that same day, but consequently, but my limit is 3 coffees a day. So rock and roll always for the 10, the 50, and the 3. Financially stressed. I'm an artist, athlete, philosopher, independent, geopolitical, theoretical analyst, theorist, and strategist, and philosopher. And we're going to continue with part 1, I guess, because yesterday was the introduction, with general geopolitics and the North American civilizational complex. What is the general geopolitics and the North American civilizational complex? So if you're not into geopolitics, and it's not a dance video, it's Priestess of the Goddess, gonna get commissioned for that. If you want to do some dancing, I can dance 24/7. That's not a problemo. I love dancing, is my favorite sport, and it's always God bless and God has kissed the coming of our empire. Dancing is my favorite sport, and I am the world's greatest living dancing millennial poet. I am the world's greatest living dancing millennial poet, who's also great at geopolitics, due to the fact that geopolitics is my special interest, aka obsessive interest. I have this neurological mental divergence, in quotations, in parentheses, a disorder, but a disorder in certain things. You have to understand that Asperger's is not a full disorder in all aspects of society, of life, because Aspies, we constitute less than 1% of the population. So you are the neurotypicals, the 99%, with which we have to build bridges, sometimes small bridges, medium sized bridges, large bridges, or extra large bridges, right? And we do have some things which we have to work on constantly. And you know, me, it took me years and years and years to accept my aspiness, my neurodivergence. Since about 2015, 2016, several people who have worked in the healthcare system that have told me, that you have Asperger's, you have autism, HFA, high functioning autism, and I didn't want to wear the stigma, the label of Asperger's and HFA, high functioning autism, due to the fact that it has these. There's still a stigma, less and less and less. There's more demystifying. So there's more demystification of what Asperger's is and what Asperger's is not. We have our troubles in our when it comes to the dynamics of social understandings, right? So understanding of the social dynamics, and in the workplace, things have to be more clearly defined. The tasks and the expectations, and sometimes we're pretty direct and straightforward, and it might seem abrasive, but it's not that we intend to be offending anybody or to be abrasive. It's just that our brain is made different. So these social skills sometimes we lack, right? For example, personal space. We might breach personal space, get very close to a person face to face, and I always, in the past years, as I've been working constantly on it, because it's been about 3.5 years now since I've accepted that I have Asperger's, and it's been a tough road to accept it. And this book is partly helpful if teaching Asperger's students skills through acting, I only got to the 45th page, so I'm gonna finish. I guess I can turn it to the 46th, but I got to the 44th page. So it's not that helpful as the one that I recommend the most is Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome. Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome is a book on Asperger's, and HFA is the same thing, high functioning autism, which I strongly recommend to all. This one has 191 pages, so basically, if you do the math, 191 parallel to 40. Let's say 45 or 44.9, it's about 25%, so a quarter. 25% is the equivalent of a quarter of the book. And yes, Aspies, we tend to be above average in mathematics. So Aspies, we have a tendency to be above average in mathematics, above average in math. We tend to be above average, and verbal, intellect, linguistic skills as well. However, we lack in the social awareness, and we have sometimes these weird, strange gestures, which can be misinterpreted and seen as weird, odd, and bizarre. Or certainly, certain behavior can seem that way. But so, teaching Asperger's students through acting, all their world is a stage. I like this. All their world is a stage. Basically, theirs, as in their neurotypical world of you, the 99% of the population with which we have to build bridges. But paradoxically, it also has its very good. It takes a lot of patience, requires a lot of patience and understanding Asperger's, and it has its good, very good. We're great at our special interests, and also known as obsessive interest, although I do not use the word obsessive interest much, because an obsessive interest would be more from a perspective of a neurotypical person, who you see it as an obsession in a more negative connotation of the word, the etymology, the word sense, the sense of the word, the feel of the word. Obsessive has a more negative, but special interest for Aspies can be a source of joy and harmony in many ways, and even achievement. So this achievement can be attained by Aspies in those special interests, and they vary. I'm an individual Aspie within the community, and again, Monday I had a discussion with a fellow citizen, and he didn't know. A lot of people don't know what Asperger's is. So I mentioned, after we were like 5 minutes into the discussion, I've mentioned that I have this neurological mental divergent condition known as Asperger's, and he said, I never heard of it. So he had never heard of it, and it's not that common. It's a more rare condition, right? It's about 0.44%, so not a lot of people have it, less than 1 out of 300. And it's just manifest in the different ways that we interact in the social skills. We might lack social skills, we might not know when to speak, when not to speak, and if a person is interested. So, for example, I can go on and on and on about geopolitics without necessarily knowing that that person is not interested in it. I have to be told more directly, and sometimes we have to be told more directly, I'm not interested, or please, I would like this conversation to end. That's best with Aspies, or I would like to part ways now, and I'll see you later, and goodbye for now, or I'll talk to you later, or I'm not interested, and just more direct, right? More direct. And that's it, that's all. That's why from now on, it's December 11th. I don't will to waste nobody's time, and life is time, and life is important, and I do friends with benefits only, but for that friends with benefits only, you have to be born before December 11th, 2007, because if you do the math, 2025 minus 2007 is 18, so you got to be 18 plus. If you're black, you're white or black, you're a man, you're a woman. I am part of the LGBTQ community, androgynous, pansexual, and I don't have any particular frustrations in that matter, but I would love to have friends with benefits to trade and exchange massages and do some loving scenarios. I concoct loving scenarios. I embrace physicality and physical pleasure as well. I don't make any pretense whatsoever on that. It just has to be consensual and has to be 18 plus. But besides that, I live a very active lifestyle. I live with my scars. I live with my trauma, and I'm just financially stressed right now. I've been financially stressed on and off for many years. I had many jobs, but it's just losing the jobs, the employment. And I gotta mention it because it's important for Aspies, and I gotta thank an Aspie who in 2024, I believe around circa September, sent via PayPal. I haven't gotten any donation. The last donation and financial support was a year and September, October, November, about 14 months ago. 14 months and some days ago. I was gifted, or 13 months and 4 days maybe. Gotta double check on the PayPal, if I double check exactly on the PayPal, but it was in 2024. It was autumn already, so it might have been October. Might have been October actually. I believe it was September, but gotta double check the exact date to be concordant. But gifted me Canadian dollars, $25.44, and that was a great one, and I appreciate it. It was a fellow Aspie. I haven't got any donations ever since. I had some employment, but I'm always open for business and employment, and I have had many jobs, especially during COVID. In steel, I worked in steel, and I worked in the warehouse, and I worked with the elderly, and it's just keeping the jobs, And now I'm waiting because I applied in the past month. I applied to several jobs, but I did some follow-ups, but I didn't. I received only one feedback, that they're not hiring at the moment, which was consequential, and that was of course the matter that would be to be related about. So nonetheless, it is something that I wish to continue to do, and it is in these matters where we have the relationship of all the things where we have now, to place and build those bridges which we have to build with neurotypicals. Because, for example, in my tiny small community, the Aspie community of the North American Collective of North America, the unemployment in some regions can be higher than 80%. 80%, that's 11 times higher than the neurotypical, 11 times higher. So for every one of you who's unemployed, there could be 11 Aspies, people with Asperger's. So 80%, or sometimes more than 80%, 85. Can you imagine the horror of the unemployment horror for Aspies? It's still very high, and it is because we tend to lose the jobs. We tend to lose them after a few days, a few weeks, a few hours, because people can notice that difference in many ways in a few hours, if not right away, if not minutes, in a few minutes and hours or days, you can notice that, well, this person is different, So Aspies, we're different, and not negative, evil, or bad, but we have these differences of how our brain works, because there's tiny, small, at the microscopic level, there's mutations of the brain, right? It's not protruding outside of the exterior of the cranium to be visible, but it's of course interior, at the interior level of the brain, that those microscopic mutations occur. So those microscopic mutations occur interior of the brain. So we process information differently, and that's why this book is teaching Aspie students social skills, because that can come very difficult for us to understand and fully apply. As I got to give a shout out to my anonymous friend for gifting me the book Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome. It was not a gift because he was loaned 4 times from the library, and there it has several chapters, and I had to read them over again for me to also sort of understand and learn to be able to build these bridges, because we can be very vulnerable in certain situation, social situation, because we don't fully understand. So we might not know that, for example, our vulnerabilities, we can be sometimes in danger, sometimes in vulnerabilities to X, Y, Z factors, more or less. Well, physical, I guess, economic or financial, or losing employment due to gossip or whatever have you. But I'm not perfect. Even as a matter of fact, I wish I could give my anonymous friends some money to buy the washer, because I think 2/3, more than 66%, I believe that is my fault. So there's a high probability the most of the damage caused to the washer was my fault, and I am grateful to have had it, because for the past 3 years I haven't had to go to the laundromat as I used to go in the past to the laundromat and spend money. So, and it's Dragon versus Trump, so I got those red gloves. Thank you to my anonymous friend for those red gloves. I put them to some good use. I got them from 7 years now, and it's Dragon versus Trump since Granddaddy Trump made the mistake to impose tariffs on Canadian aluminum of steel, and even now furthering the escalation of the trade war. But with Canada, of course, basically imposing restrictions on trade, it is something which we have to fully understand in those dynamics where we are appellative now. So Asperger's can be more difficult, and it takes some patience and understanding. And to understand, if you have somebody with Asperger's, maybe this book is just for Aspies itself, because it's teaching Asperger's students social skills through acting. All their world's a stage. All their world's a stage, and through acting. So, appreciating Asperger's syndrome is my top favorite on Asperger's to date, and I haven't read that many books relating to Asperger's and autism. To be honest, I only have, in the past 3 years, we have like 6. And some I read like 1/3, 4/5, not fully. Just Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome, that one I recommend the most. That one I recommend the most out of the past 7 that I had read in the past 3 years. This one is, I'm going to finish it. I'm going to have to finish it and maybe do another follow-up review. So Asperger's, we have special interests, and those special interests preoccupy our daily habits and routines. And from now on, just because I don't want to waste anybody's time, you know how we rock and roll, pledge your allegiance, legions to our family. Always for the 10, the 50, and the 3. And I'm also a mystic, and I believe in reincarnations. I was born in the United States 3 times, post 76. Once as a woman, twice as a man, served in the same United States Armed Forces. 2 different wars. The wars were 156 years apart, and I can channel George Patton's At the Power of 7. George Patton's poem Through a Glass Darkly, one of my favorite poems on reincarnation. Through a Glass Darkly, you can read yourself. One of my poems, Through a Glass Darkly, is George Patton's poem, which I of course recommend to all alike to read it and discover the mystic spiritual beliefs which me and George Patton share in common. But he didn't mention that he was my wife in a past life, and I was George Patton's wife in a past life, because from ancient Egypt as a priestess, as I danced in the cohort of Miriam, Moses' sisters dancing. Maybe that's why I get that busting dancing even today in 2025, when will 2026 be the year of dancing rock and roll for Adrian Hanna Dragon rebirthing during this COVID. I died. It's going to be 6 years since I died of COVID right in this room, Office and Temple, in February 2020. I got really sick. I thought I was going to die, and in 2019 October, I predicted what's happening now geopolitically. You heard that correct and right. I predicted what's happening now in an international general overall manner. I predicted the international conflagration which we're living now. So now, as we move towards one of my special interests, in par with rock and roll and sports and fitness, dancing being my favorite sport, we're gonna discuss geopolitics. So support fellow Aspies, if you will, and of course Aspies of the world unite. Appreciating Asperger's syndrome, I recommend that book to all alike. And of course support fellow Aspies in employment, because 80% unemployment for Aspies, 4 out of 5 Aspies, and we're a tiny small minority. There's not a lot of us, and like my fellow citizen didn't even know what it was. 3 out of 10 people that I discuss with citizens don't know what it is. 3 out of 10. So 3 out of 10 that know what it is. So 7 don't know. 3 out of 10 know. 7 do not know. So it's a ratio, of course, of 30% of neurotypicals about, or maybe less, that know what Asperger's is. It's not that common. Most people, if not all probably know what cancer is, right? Cancer, everybody knows, but Asperger's, not a lot of people know what it is because it's rare. It's not that common. It's an yes, in certain things, it's a disability and a disorder and a quote unquote disease, but it's a paradoxical because it's not really a disease, it's not really a disorder, and it's not really a disease nor a disorder, right? It's a neurological mental divergent condition which paradoxically has its challenges in mostly social areas. So now let's get into geopolitics, because that is my special interest, and that is what I am as an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist, philosopher, and strategist, developing strategies for the North American collective. Leave the baggage at the door. As geopolitics. Part 1, yesterday was the introduction. General geopolitics, after a long introduction on Asperger's. General geopolitics and the North American collective civilizational complex, aka the North American collective, aka the North American civilizational complex. What is that? As a philosopher, of course, the North American civilizational complex, as you can see from years and years of my past videos, you can get more acquainted with the philosophy. Of course, here in Quebec, as you can see the flag, and yes, I do have the United States flag. I have 3 of them, auctioning all the flags for $1 million each to get 50% to my anonymous friend and get that rock and rolling. So yes, the North American collective, we are part of it. I am part of it. You're part of it if you're a North American, or if you're a newcomer who has come to join here. Whenever you have arrived, you have arrived, whether in Montreal, in Quebec, in Canada, in the United States, you are also part of the North American civilizational complex, which includes as well, it's Canada, United States, but also Mexico, and Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Jamaica, the islands, and Cuba is a paradox. But all that really constitute the North American civilizational complex with its regional dynamics of this emergent civilizational complex. Social, historical, cultural civilizational complex of the North American emergent civilization. So it's an emergent one. It's forming, and it has been formed more or less since about the end of the Second World War, and of course my philosophy goes back, of course, to the 4-part lecture series, as this is going to be a 4-part lecture series before we end the year. So we're going to end the year this December with rock and roll, dancing, and geopolitics this December. So dancing videos coming, rock and roll videos, always rock and rolling. For the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the truckers, the plumbers across the North American collective. Always for the 10, the 50, and the 350, the 63. Primarily let our empire rise and be. If you don't know what that's about, pledge your allegiance to our family or friends with benefits only. I don't want to waste anybody's time. It is 11th of December 2025. Rock and rolling. Encourage you all to work out, train, exercise. And I have been and will call for a mass financing via a public-private partnership for citizens to work out, train, exercise in the North American collective civilizational complex, for citizens to work out, train, and work out in the civilizational complex, to work out, train, and exercises has been, is, and will be my medicine and therapy of choice, parallel to mass financing intra-imperial Republican tourism activities via mass public-private partnership, as I am a pro-labor and love universal revolutionary centrism, and my North American Collective Workers Party, through that NACWP, aka the Phoenix People's Party, the Global Dragon Union for the North American Collective Workers Party, the NACWP, which we have to finance and fund the NACWP, the North American Collective Workers Party, in the integral manners of the North American Collective Workers Party, where we have, of course, to do now in all the integral aspects of our civilizational complex, where we are the dynamics of the flourishing of the North American civilizational complex now, where we have, of course, to be in all the left and the right and the appellatives, where we got to be now, consequently, and in prudence, and to let sometimes the baggage at the door when we enter a realm which we are not familiar with, because geopolitics encompasses a whole area of the world. It is global. So when I say general geopolitics, it's worldwide, global, international, and universal, because three things never sleep: The sun never sleeps. The sun never sleeps. Sun every minute. The sun is always rising, always setting every minute. And not only that the sun is rising and setting every minute, but of course, there's always a sunset and a sunrise, and in concordance, money never sleeps as well. So money never sleeps, the sun never sleeps, and geopolitics never sleeps. Geopolitics never sleeps. And of course, being that geopolitics never sleeps, it is the concordiate, of course, that geopolitical events always transpire because we have different time zones. It is 12:15 now p.m. in the EST, and all consequential that the time zones are in the apparatus of all our mechanics of the global geopolitical machine, that we are interacting at one point or another as individual sovereign citizens with the North American Collective, right? North American Collective with Quebec, Canada, here where we made the great linguistic compromise of the North American Collective, what I call the great linguistic compromise of the North American civilizational complex, and we continue to do so in today and in the future, but it requires an individual effort, because myself, I also have to do it. If I don't do it myself, it's not done in a concordiate with a public-private partnership in all the concordium, where we have to maintain peace and order and harmony in the North American civilizational complex. That has to be fully understood and grasped in such a dynamic way, in a dynamic way, in an evolving way, because the French language, I also have to write rock and roll songs, and not that I have to, because I just do it automatically. And for example, I'm a Quebecer, Canadian, North American. Sometimes when I see that the cars are not respecting the pedestrian lights, when you have 7 seconds, then it goes down to 6.5, and the car rushes in, I start swearing a bit, maybe in French. Hey, mon tabarnak qui t'a appris à conduire, vous voyez pas, c'est les piétons, vous êtes pas patient avec l'automobile, le char, allez pesez pas sa pédale trop bien vite, ralentissez un peu, so I get a little bit of that flourishing Quebecer style French, you know. But here, the beauty that we made, what I call, as a my philosophy, that we made the great linguistic compromise, right? Because we have, and we're going to be the French state, Quebec is going to be the French state of our empire, the French state. And I gotta give a little bit of a shout out to the Hydro-Quebec workers of the past, who now built 63 dams, interestingly enough, 63 to concord the number of the states which we're gonna fuse in the Imperial Public-Private Partnership Public-Private Partnership Complex. The 63, right? We have 63 dams of Hydro-Quebec, and I'm doing this video and I'm utilizing all the energy, the electricity that I'm utilizing inside the house to heat, because it's a very cold, cold 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 day today in Montreal. To heat the apartment, it's utilized by those workers and the arbeit, the works in French is travail, which was done between the 1940s and up to 3 years ago, when the new dams, La Romaine was opened up, the two La Romaines in Quebec, right, in the province of Quebec. So that is something which I have to mention, that the electricity that I'm utilizing does not pollute. Almost zero pollution, because it comes from hydroelectricity. And our electricity goes to 5 or 6, I believe six states now. 20%, that is 1/5 of the electricity from Manhattan Island all the way to Manhattan Island, New York, comes from Hydro-Quebec. Hydro-Quebec. Can you keep that in mind? Can you keep that in mind in consequence? 1/5 all the way to Manhattan Island. That's clean, zero pollution, hydroelectricity, which goes from Quebec all the way to New York. Manhattan, buy, sell, future option, put trades. Please put on that analysis, and please, now I'll call it a heart because I mentioned Wall Street. We got 13 days till holidays, till the Christmas and New Year's. It's 11th of December. Please, millionaires, I would want to see the reduction, and please give some candies, some toys, some candies and toys, and of course consequentially the candies and the toys, reduction of the prices. And I love the lights, the eggnog. I really go crazy with the eggnog. If I can afford it, I have a tight budget, because I'm financially stressed. My only stress now is financial, but eggnog, gotta rock and roll with that eggnog. I love eggnog. And I love the lights, I just love the lights, holiday lights, and we have a lot in our neighborhood here. The blue ones, the yellow ones, the purple ones, the red ones, red, green, of course, and all those lights, where we have to be consequential now, to be in the prudence of all our manifestation, where we have now to be relatively appellations, to move in concordia to all the dynamics of the dynamic, the actually the realities of the financial struggles which many are undergoing in both Canada and the United States. So that's why I'm making a call at the heart for the millionaires, billionaires. If I would have been a millionaire, billionaire, what I would have done is, of course, I would have financed candies and toys and trees and lights for the families. I would have put people to work. I would have gotten before December 1st. I would have started December 1st until December 23rd. So 22-day period. I would have just endeavored to hire some youth, and maybe unemployed and maybe Aspies like myself, because our unemployment is very high, 80%, and maybe even some homeless, to give them some good hundreds of dollars and some towns. Say, hey, you want to work? We're gonna go on some trucks. We're gonna load the trucks and we're gonna unload the trucks, and we're gonna go in the neighborhoods with the community organizations, with the security forces, with the police forces, with the armed forces across North America as a mass public-private partnership. I would have financed. If I would have had 44 billion, I would have put a billion for that project across North America, because it's unprecedented tough times with so much food bank use, so much food bank use, so much food bank use. Here in Canada, food bank use doubled since 2019, and it's very tough. It has gotten bad, and the majority of the population, my brothers and sisters in the USA also, it's struggling, eh? We're too much in debt. That's why my DRT theory for the North American Collective, the debt refusion theory for the creation of the UE, U.Universal, E.Exchange, U.UE, U.Universal, E.Exchange, U.UE, for the universal exchange via the debt refusion theory, the DRT, for the creation of the UE, aka the imperial dollar, when we're going to fuse Canada and the United States into the imperial Republican complex, the Democratic Republican via, of course, the third party, which are going to be Democratic Republican, Universal Revolutionary Centrism. My Universal Revolutionary Centrists, my universal revolutionary centrism is North American centric, and it's primarily to fuse Canada and the United States, basically. That has to be understood as a mass public-private partnership, and to rebuild the ghettos, rebuild the inner urban cities, and rehabilitate our population, because it's in our geopolitical interest to rehabilitate our brothers and sisters who lost their liberty and their freedom, and to build those 44 mass underground structures across Canada and the United States in case of a thermonuclear war. We gotta get that arbite. It's an emergency and crisis, and rehabilitate our population, And for total SSD, security, service, and defense, that's why I'm calling my astrological brother Bill Gates, Microsoft, Flock the surveillance, Flock. We're gonna have to have public surveillance everywhere, cams and webcams, and accessible for all citizens everywhere in a point of interest. And of course, we're gonna have to secure our 5G, 4G, and 5G networks by creating our North American phones and distributing them for citizens, which are gonna be able to do volunteering, to have special phones, special citizen phones, as we're gonna accord citizenship to anybody who's been living in Canada and United States, and do an amnesty. We're gonna do some amnesty work, and we're gonna do some. We have to do a census. And we have to also implement the Imperial Criminal Rehabilitation Act. It's in our geopolitical interest to rehabilitate our population, brothers and sisters. Some brothers and sisters who deserve second, third chances. I guess myself, maybe that's why I was saved. I guess to save others, because I remember around end of 2015, 2016, I did an intervention where, right here in Montreal, a citizen security intervention, where back then was the problems with the Islamic State terror group. They were, of course, attacking, and if you remember, they had performed several attacks with hundreds of people, mass casualty events, like the Bataclan in Paris, Bataclan, November, that's 10 years, Bataclan in November, in Paris, and right here in Montreal, I get goosebumps every time I discuss it. We had a freely distributed newspaper, right? Freely distributed newspaper, community newspaper, and in it, I was reading it, and I got goosebumps when I read propaganda on behalf of the Islamic State terror group. They were calling people to pledge allegiance to the Islamic State group right here in the open, freely, cost-free, no cost, freely distributed in Montreal. A community newspaper, and several articles, and one 4-page article discussed the Islamic State, and was calling on people to attack here in Montreal. So I brought it right away to the security forces. I did intervention with Canadian Security Intelligence Establishment, CSIS, and I brought it to the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, which in the past life, when it was known as the Dominion Police, I did some work, and I believe my intervention maybe saved hundreds of lives, maybe tens of lives, maybe 44 lives, because somebody could have read that and it could have done what it was calling for, basically attacking Canadians and North Americans and attacking across Montreal, to pledge allegiance to the Islamic State. And I get goosebumps when I discuss it. I have no idea how that was missed I don't even know how that was passed by the editor. And after I checked, the newspaper was not in print anymore. The newspaper was not in print. I couldn't believe what I was reading in Montreal, freely distributed newspaper. I don't know how the SPVM missed it, the police forces here, So I guess I did, maybe due to my past life incarnation, maybe my security for my fellow citizens gut instinct came in, and I had to do it, and I just went to do it, And I distributed, basically I did a citizen independent security action, independent citizen security action, an independent security action. When it comes to terrorism and these matters, it has to be commended, it has to be commended. And independent citizen security actions, that's part of my philosophies. I started writing that right after that event, actually, the independent citizen security action, So you take action, and then in consequence to the action and initiatives, it has to be some discernment. And this was clearly, of course, and of course that is a great matter of geopolitics. The terrorism is still going on, terrorism, And I get goosebumps every time I discuss that. See? I get goosebumps. That was 2016. More than 9 years ago. Our citizen intervention, and that's what sometimes, I don't like violence myself. I am hyper vigilant. I don't like violence, and I like sports and fitness. I am intense. I'm hyper vigilant, but I do not like violence. And I lived it myself years and years ago. I still have to retrieve the archives. I gave myself a new deadline because with Aspiesque time management is more difficult. But of course, the deadline is, of course, to go before December 24th, and to see when was it that I went to the emergency room, because I survived a vicious surprise attack. I was hit in the head a few times, hit my head on the concrete, and had a dislocated right arm. So my right arm was dislocated, and I was bloodied up. I was all bloodied up, and I went to the Jewish General Hospital, bloodied up to the Jewish General Hospital, and they gave me they cracked back my right arm shoulder, crack, and I was given some medication, and I want to know what that medication was. I'm very curious, when did I go? What date was it? Because as you know, my memory before January, February 2014, winter 2014, basically before January, February 2014, winter 2014, my memory before winter 2014, which is a long time ago, right? It's 11 years and 10 months ago. In February is going to be 12 years. In 2 months is going to be 12 years because it's 11th of December. So 11th of February is going to be 12 years since 2014. Wow, 12 years. So my memory is good of the past 8, 9, 10 years, 11. Then before that is like a blackout, like flashes and like a blackout of my memory, It's like the official term, medical technical term is retrograde amnesia. Sometimes memory comes back, but it doesn't matter. All my life work is basically post 2017, because I remember I was depressed and suicidal, and like from 2014, like end of 2014 till about summer 2017. And summer 2017 I crossed coast to coast Canada. I went to Vancouver, BC. That was a great event. Vancouver, BC, 2017 in August, and then in September went to Halifax, Nova Scotia, and of course Halifax, Nova Scotia. In September we took the train, and we went by the train 25 hours and 44 minutes, 25 hours and 44 minutes, and that was of course the appellation. When the recollection of that event is that event got me out of depression. Before that I was depressed and suicidal, and I was depressed and suicidal prior to that event, and of course that consequences, when I of course gotta say, recall that event with great enthusiasm, because that got me out of depression. And I started writing that protocol, the mass. It had a more fancy academic title. It was somewhere in my USB keys. I gotta find it. I started writing it at the end of 2017, because that event, of course, like I said, it got me out of depression. Hey, got me out of depression. So 2017, yeah, I got the tickets, auctioning them for $1 million, and That event, traveling kind of coast to coast, made me establish a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians and my brothers and sisters in the USA. And I have written the document called the Mass Public-Private Partnership Initiative for the Mass, or the Public-Private Partnership Citizen Integrated Initiative for the Mass Financing of Tourism for across the North American Collective for overall general wellness. Yeah, it has a more academic, long academic title, but technical academic title, my paper, but it's basically fundamentally, which I'm calling for years and years, I've been calling to mass finance tourism. And in the coming of our Imperial Republic of the 63, we're going to mass finance citizens to everybody who's 16 and over. Every 4 seasons, we're going to have 4 seasons across the 63 or the Imperial Republic, where we're going to fuse Canada and the United States, and was a mass public-private partnership. All citizens who are 16 and plus, 4 days, 4 times a year, spring equinox, solstice, summer spring equinox, solstice, autumn equinox, solstice, and winter equinox, solstice. 4 times 4, 4 times 4, that's 16, and people are going to be able to travel anywhere across the 63 with food, lodging, and food, lodging, and food, lodging, and that's it. Food, lodging, and transport is going to be provided, so you can travel from California to Quebec, from Yukon to Florida, or anywhere across the 63. You can take 4 days 4 times a year, or 8 days twice a year, or 16 days every year. But once you reach 44, you have to use it, because otherwise you get back to zero. So use it or you lose it. You can't accumulate hundreds of days and then take all the hundreds of days. We're gonna have to have that standard. Once you reach a certain point, you're gonna be advised, take your days, go travel, see the empire, see the empire, see the empire, go have fun, go eat, go enjoy, see the empire. See our empire. So that's the Imperial Citizen Tourism Protocol, and that's what we're gonna do together in all, of course, all those left to right initiatives where we're gonna have to be relatively to do it, and it's going to require the NFL, National Football League, NHL, National Hockey League, NBA, National Basketball Association, MLB, the Public-Private Partnership, which all the public institutions and organizations, Wall Street and millionaires, billionaires, and all, it's going to be financed by the grace of the Public-Private Partnership of our coming of our empire, the government Public-Private Partnership, because this Imperial's tourist protocols will rejuvenate and will establish our esprit de corps and will rejuvenate our youth, because when one turns 16, 4 days are recorded. 16 in one day. If you're going on the spring, you're going on summer, you get 4 days, 4 days, 4 days. So 12, 12, and organize with others, taken together. Oh, you guys are 16. You guys are going to see the empire, eh? Oh, you're gonna go travel, free travel across the empire, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. We're gonna find the dancing goddess of the Dragon Kingdom, the Dragon Army, aka the Imperial Integrated Security Service and Defense Force, the SSD, the Imperial Service and Security Service and Defense Force. We're gonna secure the SSD, Security Service and Defense, integrate, fuse the RCMP and the FBI. The RCMP and the FBI, we're gonna fuse it, of course, together, and we're gonna get, of course, on that rock and rolling. The SSD, of course, what we're gonna get for that mass public-private partnership, and we're going to fuse and create two complementary covenant and cooperative institutions. The Imperial Integrated Dance League, aka the Imperial Integrated Dance League, will be the dancing goddess army to dance for rejuvenation across the 63, because Canada has 10, and 3, that's 13 new states, just like the original 13. We're going to add 13, and of course the paradox, Granddaddy Trump knows that I would have voted for Biden or Kamala, but and made mistake. That's why I've been challenging Granddaddy Trump to a boxing match on the Canadian-U.S. border. We're going to build the 4 on the Canadian-U.S. border. When we're going to fuse, we're going to build the biggest ever sports complex arena as a geopolitical structure and a social structure, and of course it's going to be a geopolitical statement as well. And of course we're going to build the biggest ever sports arena complex ever built as a mass public-private partnership. It's going to be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome. Now, before Caesar Superdome, it was known as the Louisiana Superdome, and before that it was known as the Mercedes-Benz, where one of my favorite Super Bowls was played, battled, and fought out. One of my Super Bowl 47, aka, has several nicknames. Hardball Bowl, aka Bro Bowl, Hardball Bowl has several nicknames. One of it is Blackout Bowl, Super Bowl 47. That's what it is, and that's what we're gonna concord it on the Canadian-U.S. border. We're gonna build it 11 times bigger than that arena. We're gonna have sports events 24/7 with dedication every month. We're gonna have a dedication for any worker, firefighters, for the butchers, the bakers, the welders, the construction workers, the nurses, with team thematic sports events 24/7, and we're gonna build the Imperial Colosseum, Imperial Republic Colosseum, to be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome. And of course, we're gonna build, of course, the Forgotten Goddess Temple, because it's God bless and Goddess bless. It's God bless and Goddess kiss. God goes trillions of kisses. God trillions of kisses created from the Forgotten Goddess. And of course, we're gonna build the Forgotten Goddess Temple, the the Imperial Integrated Goddess Temple, the Forgotten Goddess Temple, to be 11 times bigger than here in Montreal. We got a structure called the St. Joseph's Oratory, so the Forgotten Goddess Temple is going to be bigger than 11 times bigger than the St. Joseph's Oratory, and in consequence we're going to get, of course, of that appellation to be built, of course, in the relationship to build the pyramid, House of the Dragon, and of course the House of the Dragon, we're going to build it in consequence, parallel, of course, to the pyramid, House of the Dragon, red, scarlet, what I said. The fourth building which we're going to build is going to be the Rainbow People's Coliseum for my fellow LGBTQ community and neurodivergent community. As a pro-labor, love, universal revolutionary centrism, the North American Collective Workers' Party, the Democratic Republic, we're going to fuse, of course, and merge together. And this is going to be great geopolitics, and we're going to establish the bipolar strategy for the North American Collective for BDD, total benevolent dominance and dominion of the world, and benevolent BDD for BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion. Counterpoise to the national security strategy that's in the news for the past 3.5 days, and I read it last night after 5 hours of marching, because I did a 5 hour and 9 minutes marching. 5 hour and 9 minutes, let me double check, and I wrote it down right after. So yesterday I marched, it was cold, 6 minutes, 5 hours and 6 minutes. So yesterday I marched more than any general of NATO, 5 hours and 6 minutes. It was a good march and had that good rock and roll. So today we're gonna do at least 4 hours. Today we're gonna bust maybe 4 hours, 3.5, maybe minimum 3, because then if you do 3 today to get the average, which we got average, we got to do 5 tomorrow, so maybe we can bounce with that. We're going to see how we're going to play it rock and roll, because it's a very cold day today. But as I was marching, I was doing the meditation, and when I came back, after the march, I read the national security strategy, and of course I got to counterpoise it. I'm not going to offer any specific insights because I have to reread it. Of course, a general aperçu, whatever, whatever criticism one might add, it's also parallel to criticism, one has to offer also alternative courses of action. For example, my CIT, citizen integration theory, DRT, debt refusion theory, and the DFT have to be implemented in concordiate. And it's, as much as I understand, peace through strength as a geopolitical due to the geopolitical realities in counterpoise and parallel to the fact that I predicted what's happening now back in 2019, of course, in a general manner. Of course, we have to appellate and say, of course, congruently in all the manners that my prediction is happening and has been happening for the past, at least since Russia invaded Ukraine. It's going to be 4 years in February. So that's stated and fully understood and briefly, of course, discussed in such a manner that we have to relate it to the current geopolitical events of the past and present and potential geopolitical events of the future, such as the crisis on the horizon between China and Japan and the potential invasion of Taiwan by China, because Taiwan is known as the ROC, and that's an unresolved conflict, and that's what we're seeing across the world. As I had predicted in a general, more academic manner, there was lots of details to my prediction, but one of the main factors was that the old conflicts, which were not fully resolved, they're going to be restarting. So that the old conflicts are going to be restarting. The old conflicts, of course, will restart. So due to the fact that, of course, these old conflicts have not fully been resolved, and of course, being that they're not fully resolved in those manners, they have restarted in many ways across the world. If you see China and Russia, you see that China vis-a-vis Taiwan is parallel an old conflict from the 20th century vis-a-vis the 20th century, aka the Cold War, which lasted almost 45 years between March 1947 and end of December 1991. And you see that Russia-Ukraine is also an unresolved conflict, as is Israel and Palestine, Israel and Hamas, Israel and the Arab world, right? The third and the fourth one is potentially India and Pakistan. Those are unresolved conflicts, and we have other unresolved conflicts, such as in Africa with the colonial history. So there are many, right, potentially unresolved conflicts, which many have started, because Russia-Ukraine is an unresolved Cold War era conflict. Israel, the Middle East, Hamas was founded in the 80s, right? So as you know, that before October 7th, 2023, I was advocating us via my protocol Genesis 33 for Israel to join NATO. But when a country is at war, a country cannot join NATO. So that advocacy has ceased post that October 7th surprise attack on Israel by Hamas. That was before October 7th. I was advocating for that. So now we're going to see where the resolution with the ceasefire, what's going to finalize the finalization of that conflict. But if a total treaty is reached and a ceasefire is reached, then consequently, maybe we could do Genesis 33 to include Israel in NATO. Israel to be included as Genesis 32. Because now we have 32 countries. Sweden joined last year, right? 18 months ago. More than a year ago, Sweden joined as the 32nd. So I was advocating actually for both Israel and Mexico to join simultaneously via Genesis 33. Mexico and Israel. So that's geopolitics, and that's part of geopolitics. And geopolitical strategy, of course, we have to discern that my geopolitical strategies are fundamentally for the North American collective complex, for North America, for NORAD NATO, for what I call the North American civilizational complex. In consequence, then establishing them, furthering them to NATO, to the NATO alliance, to the NATO alliance. So that has to be fundamentally understood proper. So I guess this is part one, and to part two, where we do it when we're gonna do it tomorrow or over the weekend or next week, next Monday before the 24th, before the holidays. Of course, we're gonna delve into more details about the national security strategy, which the national security strategy is now very much discussed and lots of opinions. I read it, the 33 pages. I read it. I have to read it again and to make a parallel to what I'm advocating for and see where we can make some compromises with the national security strategy, because for me it's always binational. For example, my total mobile defense theory, the TMDT, when it has an S, the fifth acronym letter, it becomes a system. So the total mobile defense theory, which I started developing after I crossed Canada coast to coast and I started establishing a strong esprit over my fellow North Americans, and I got out of depression and being suicidal, my TMDT, I cannot discuss it over much because it's national security sensitive, but it's not just national. As you see hundreds of my videos over the past 3.5 years, I always mention that it's binational security sensitive, binational, because me it's always 10-3 and this 50, the 63, always for the 63 as we're gonna fuse and merge and become one people, the imperial American Canadian people, which we're gonna fuse into one people here, free, brave, strong, and loving, not just here the true north, strong and free is not enough to be strong and free. You gotta have some loving with that, eh? Some rock and roll with that. It's not just I understand peace through strength, because I predicted what's happening now, this catastrophe, this international crisis, and now we see that a comet rips the sky. When a comet rips the sky, Atlas down the sea we rise. When a comet rips the sky. There's a poem. What's a poem? Poem, rock and roll song? Poem. I don't know. When a comet rips the sky, when a comet rips... This is a song, right? I'm referring to the current event, Atlas, and the fact that Europe has activated some of their... something that they have never activated before. Anyway, so my total mobile defense theory, I don't discuss it over much because I have to discuss it only with high-ranking security apparatus members of the armed forces, the RCMP and the FBI, and of course David McGinty and Big Hexet, and of course Pam Bondi, and the matter, of course, to be relative to the National Security Agency and the security apparatus, and of course Tulsi Gabbard and the high-ranking members of the security. The TMDT, Total Mobile Defense Theory, those four-letter acronyms, when we include the S, right, the S, it becomes a system. So it's for the North American collective, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. So I cannot discuss it over much, but it goes parallel with the CIT, citizen integration theory. And of course, to create this new currency via the DRT, we have to implement the debt fusion theory together binationally as a geopolitical strategy to fuse and create a common currency and to get rid of the border. That border gotta go, and to fuse into imperial complex. And we have to understand, as much as I have been challenging Donald Trump, Granddaddy Trump, to a boxing match, Granddaddy Trump should have baked some pies, 13 pies and 50 pies, 63 pies. One different pie for each state. Say Canada is not 51st, right? Because Canada is 13. So it's not plus 1, it's going to be 13, just like the original 13 we got it. Plus 13, that's the deal we're going to make on the mountain, rock and roll, for the butchers, bakers, nurses, farmers, doctors, electricians. But as Canadians, we
You have to understand the invitation and what admission to the union is. It's a geopolitical strategy, geopolitical reality. Admission to the union, admission to the union. Rock and roll.